So welcome, everybody. It's really great to see you today. My name is Erik Owens. I'm the director of the International Studies program, and really is a pleasure to have International Studies majors and minors here, and any other friends who wanted to join, students, sophomores or younger. We're here to talk with the director of the Office for Global Education, Larry Pickener. I'm really grateful, Larry, that you've agreed to join us today to talk about all of this. We've invited Mr. Pickener to talk to us about the process of study abroad, but also even more important than properly understanding the process is thinking about why you'd study abroad, where you'd study abroad, how to identify programs that are meaningful to you, how to articulate those as part of the application process, and how to get the most out of the experience, both thinking about going abroad and the experience of being abroad itself. We have lots of resources in the IS program, starting with our peer advisors who have all studied abroad, but also other people, seniors who have reflected on it in our student voices columns, mentorship programs with the International Studies Student Association, your academic advisors, Professor Nakazato and myself as director and associate director of the program. We have lots of opportunities for you all to talk about study abroad with others and to see how it can fit well into your program of study and your life much more broadly as well, who you want to be and who you are. So with all that said, I want to welcome again Larry Pickener, and we'll have plenty of time after he makes an initial set of comments to have questions and conversation from you all. Thank you so much, Larry, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Erik. It's nice to see all of you. In a moment, I'll share my screen. I have a little bit of a presentation, but I know some of you shut your screen off, which is totally fine, but I'm going to ask this couple questions in a second. First, a little bit about me. I've been at Boston College for, well, in Thanksgiving time, it'll be 15 years. So I've been here quite a while. I've been the director of the Office of Global Education for just about almost 2 years at this point. So I've done a varied amount of things here in the office here at BC. I've worked with Professor Owens in the past on a few initiatives that I'm proud of, and I've worked closely with IS majors across. So I've kind of seen it all within this office. In a moment or two, when I share my screen, what I'm going to share with you is a very truncated version of the Study Abroad 101. I went through and sort of, instead of reinventing the wheel, I pulled out slides and information that I think are most relevant to all of you. Like I said, a lot of you shut down your screens, but I'm curious, for the ones I can see, how many, two questions. How many of you are sophomores? Just by show of hands, that's totally fine. Sophomores. I see a couple screens going back on. And of the sophomores, how many of you have done the Study Abroad 101? Okay, so some of this will look familiar. That's somewhat by design. Mainly a lot what I'm going to go over to what Professor Owens was saying were some things I think are most important to be aware of. I'll talk about what the Study Abroad 101 is in a moment when I share my screen, for those of you who haven't done it, or those of you who might be first-year students, just so you have an understanding of what we sort of expect students to do minimally in order to go abroad here at Boston College. So what you see on the screen right now is what a lot of you have already seen for the Study Abroad 101. It's the first slide. I took out a few different things that sort of fit there. In order to go abroad at Boston College, I'm gonna focus mainly on semester programs, which is where the bulk of our students go and when they go. But in order to go abroad, typically students at BC go abroad during their junior year, and we plan a year ahead of time. In order to go abroad, we ask students to do two things: to attend a Study Abroad 101 and to answer and to fill out an initial advising questionnaire. So if you see on this next page, this graphic that I have up, if you can see it, is basically from what's called our Getting Started page underneath semester programs. This are the main steps, and what I really mentioned first and foremost was number one, the questionnaire, and number two, the study abroad. The study abroad page. I see, Erik, you shared the link. Thank you for doing that. So number one and number two are the main things that you really need to be doing. I'm going to be focusing on 3 and 4. Overall, 5 through 8 are things you don't need to worry about today. When I'm done with this, I'll take time for questions, clarify anything of the like, however you would like to do that. So from the Study Abroad 101, a couple of things that sort of come to mind. We asked this question of, what are your overall goals for study abroad? And I shortened this a bit to academic goals. I shortened this to academic goals because the reason I tell everyone how long I've been here and what I've done before is that one of the main questions I used to ask students that I would advise would be, where do you want to go and why? But before anyone can answer it, I always say, you can't tell me you want to travel and you can't tell me you want to have fun. Mainly because we know, those of us who work in this office, those of us who've spent time abroad, that those two things, no matter where you go, are very likely to happen, and they don't have to be how you build your abroad experience. Wherever you go abroad, you very likely are going to have a very positive experience. Where you go abroad, if you would like to travel to other locations, that's fairly in your grasp. As a secondary note about traveling, we don't build abroad here at BC around going abroad and seeing 20 different places or even 10 different places. We want abroad to be about where you are in viewing that culture, those people, the people in that culture, in that environment. If you can then travel and do other things, that's fine, but it's not the basis of why you should go abroad. I know the reality, but what we then try to focus then on is academically, how does this fit into your time here at BC? And you can see up on your screen that essentially I asked the question, what do you hope to accomplish as part of this experience, academically as part of this experience? And I give a few examples. As IS majors, you're generally taking more language, so you can be looking at as abroad as continued language learning or more language acquisition. You don't necessarily have to go abroad and study the language you're already studying. You may be able to go someplace else and learn and take introductory courses within that language. As an aside, you don't necessarily have to go abroad to a place to study language. I know I'm a good example of this. My language skills are not very good. I should have been more adventurous and gone someplace where I could have been better at French, though I don't think anything would have helped me. Language learning is not my strongest suit. But you can go you can go abroad and not do language if you don't want to, but we encourage it. We think there's a big correlation between actually studying the language and being in that place of mastering that language. You can think about abroad as a way to do more research for a senior thesis, or do research or take courses that complement your time here at Boston College. You're in a major and a minor that's pretty diverse and has lots of different subject matter you can choose from. Abroad, you can find universities and departments that really focus in on something you might not be getting here at BC or have only had a small interest here. So you can use abroad as a way to try something else out. And then outside of the classroom, but still a way of learning, is learning about different cultures, learning about different people, how to communicate, how to sort of compare and contrast how a university runs in, let's just say, France versus the US, or how BC compares to a university in Japan, as well as how US society compares to society in South Africa. What are the commonalities? What are the differences? These are really great learning goals and things that as you graduate are going to be things that employers and whatnot look for as well. All right, so when you're planning to go abroad, again, I've sort of taken this a bit from our Study Abroad 101, but I boiled this down to one thing in your planning: setting, and that's deliberate that it's in italics, setting your own priorities. When you are going through the abroad process here at BC, you're going to talk to your friends, a couple numbers in front of you to mention to you. About 45% of students at Boston College will go abroad, either semester or summer. Those numbers are rebounding from COVID when we didn't run any programs. But I bring that up because pretty much every other student at Boston College will have some sort of international experience. You want to be choosing the program in your experience for your own reasons, not what your best friend is doing, not what your roommate is doing, not what your sister may have done, not what your parents may have done. What are your priorities? What do you want to be focusing on? And there's no right or wrong answer to that. Any sort of answer is totally fine for you, but it's important to think through what that answer is for yourself. It's actually a question we will ask you in the study abroad application you'll get to and is due by January 5th, which I can talk a little bit more about in a few minutes. But think about why you want to go abroad. Couple just logistical things. I'll click on this all at once. As I mentioned, I'm focusing on semester and academic year programs. We do run summer programs, which are not in this slide, but I'm happy to talk about. It's not deliberate, but this is more pressing, is sort of the semester. There are two types of programs at Boston College. They are remarkably similar to one another. And you can see on the screen where they are sort of the same. The biggest difference between the two types of programs currently is that if you do a Boston College program, your grades will come back to BC and they will be counted into your GPA. Currently on an approved external program, and I'll tell you what the differences are in a moment, your grades show up on your transcript, but they're not factored into your GPA. Otherwise, the programs operate very similarly. The credit you earn on a BC program or an approved external program will come back to BC and minimally count towards general elective credit. With approval, that credit can count towards major, minor, or the core. Approval is given out by the individual academic departments here at BC. As Professor Owens has sort of added in a few links, I'll mention that on our website, there are full details about what departments are looking for and what more details regarding academics overall. But by and large, the programs operate the same way. Starting with your class, anyone who goes abroad next year, it's the same tuition only, no matter where you go abroad, which means any financial aid at all that you have will go with you, whether it's a BC program or an approved external program. The big difference between BC and approved external programs is really how they're administered. Boston College programs, we have a direct partnership with these universities where we're in regular communication with essentially our peers. Some of the Boston College programs also have a resident director. Resident directors are generally BC employees who either teach a course and or provide pastoral care while you're abroad. Not every BC program has a resident director, but a good percentage of them do overall. The last key takeaway on this is that for any study abroad experience during the semester or academic year, you must go through our office. It has to be approved by BC. Sometimes students will think, can I go on this program on my own? No, for credit, you have to go through Boston College, which means going through the Office of Global Education, which is that whole process I laid out about doing the Study Abroad 101 and applying by January 5th. So that's what our programs look like. I'll spend a few minutes on this, and I'm mindful that I don't want to spend a whole hour talking at you, but I want to focus a little bit on program considerations, things to be thinking about when after you've done the Study Abroad 101 and you're now thinking about where do I want to go. I won't focus on everything on the screen here, but a few things to keep in mind that sometimes students forget. It's important to be mindful of the language of instruction of the university or the country you're choosing to go to. Students will sometimes look at Spain and not want to fully engage in the Spanish language courses. Well, most courses at Spanish universities are going to require some level of Spanish language. It's not always the high level, but there is generally going to be courses taught in that native language. So if you're worried about language learning while you're abroad, talk to the study abroad advisors here, as well as looking at our program pages to learn more about what is the minimum level for a language that required for a program. Different universities around the world, whether it's a BC program or an approved external program, have different levels of support. So there are going to be some universities where there's a resident director and there are 30 plus BC students, not counting the other American students who might be there. So there's going to be a lot of familiar faces and just built-in support for you, where there are other programs where you might be the only BC student. And either one is fine. Either one is really, again, it's about setting your priorities and what works best for you. But be aware that different programs work a little bit differently. Living accommodations, two or 3 points on this. First, as I mentioned, when you're looking at study abroad, Boston College is only charging you for tuition, not housing, except for a small number of programs. So you're paying housing directly to the universities or programs abroad. Housing abroad varies greatly from program to program and also sometimes often within programs. Some programs are going to have you living at a local university. Some are going to have you finding housing on your own. Some will be in private accommodations arranged by the host university. Some are going to be homestay families or host families. With host families, particularly for students looking for language acquisition, which is where most of the homestays are, these are wonderful opportunities to learn more about the local culture and to practice your language skills. I hear from students who sort of balk at wanting to do a homestay, that they think they're living with the equivalent of their parents and that they have to follow certain rules. You do have to follow certain rules just in the matter of being respectful and being mindful that you're living in someone's home, but it's not like living with your parents. Students oftentimes report living with homestays as one of their most positive interactions with their time abroad. But you want to be mindful of where you're living and what the program offers. Bigger picture regarding, it's not really on this slide, but bigger picture, please go into this experience not expecting the experience to be like Boston College. What we do as a residential campus in the US is very different than what most other universities do. So going into the experience thinking that it'll just be like BC with a pretty campus and classes 5 days a week and homework and things like that is a wrong assumption to be making. So which kind of goes to the last bullet point here. Be flexible, but also plan accordingly, meet with different study abroad advisors here in our office. All right. A question on a lot of people's minds is there is an application. There is an application that's due January 5th. The application is for approval to study abroad for next year, fall, spring, or the full year. So just one deadline. We will not accept late applications. I always tell students that even if you're not sure if you want to go abroad, and as IS majors, you really should be going abroad, you at least want to apply by January 5th. If you decide you don't want to go for whatever reason, you can always withdraw. You're not bound to go abroad just because you applied, but it is impossible to go abroad if you don't apply. So you have until January 5th. Every student last year, all but 3 students who applied last year, 877 students applied to go abroad, 874 were approved to go abroad on a fall, spring, or a full year program. If you meet the academic requirements to go abroad at Boston College, you will be approved to go abroad. What we cannot guarantee, and what this slide is trying to get at, and I have a couple more notes on this too, we cannot guarantee your first choice program or your first choice term. But if you have a 3.0 and you're in good academic standing, we will be able to give you a study abroad spot for next academic year. So we ask students to be flexible. What you're seeing on your screen is the result of a policy change several years ago, pre-COVID, where we're asked to balance our enrollment across both the fall and spring semester. Traditionally at BC, the spring semester is where everyone wants to go, when everyone wants to go. But that's proven problematic. So what I put up on the screen, and I have a couple other slides that illustrate this too, is just an idea of some of 4 of the more popular programs and what sort of acceptance or approval look like for these programs. We ask you to list 6 choices. What you're seeing on the screen is that for first round last year, your first choice, that if you look at Trinity College, with only 3 students applied for Trinity for the fall, but all 3 were approved. So that's great. We take more for the fall. You'll see for the spring acceptance, 37 students applied. We can only select 17. So that means 20 students did not get their first choice. Doesn't mean they weren't placed in a program. It just means that they did not get their first choice program. So you see at the end, the first round total is about half of the students who chose Trinity were approved in the first round. We did accept more students for the fall after this first round, but it gets dicier. If you look at a school like at the bottom, BC and London, you'll see that UCL had similar numbers. So you want to plan accordingly when you're looking at programs. If you use this list, and I think it's the next slide. If you use that list and then what you're seeing here gives you an idea of sort of what some of the more popular programs are. It gives you an idea of sort of what we're looking for. So some of the program selection notes, the positive is that about 60% of students received one of their top 3 choices last year. So while you may hear from students who were really upset that they got the fall semester, not everyone was upset. Most students got one of their top 3 choices. As I mentioned, so long as you meet their eligibility requirements, 3.0, progress towards your degree, no major disciplinary infractions, you're going to get approved to go abroad. Just be flexible about the where and the when. We will place students in the fall, potentially, even if you've listed all spring spots. That does happen to students who otherwise, just made not the best choices overall, which means do your own research and be mindful of what you select for 2 through 6. The last few years, the spring semester GPA, just the spring semester GPA for the most popular programs you see on the right-hand column was a 3.6 or above. So again, 3.0 is the requirement, but if you really want to go to one of these more popular programs and the spring semester, generally the GPA has been at a 3.6 or above where we've approved students in that first round. What that also means is that if you're not at a 3.6, you can certainly pick one of these programs that's listed here or others if you've spoken to program managers, but don't pick all of them for your all 6 choices. Be mindful, be strategic about how you choose your programs. I mentioned the balanced enrollments that we give you 6 choices. There's a short essay. We also ask you to speak to a faculty member. It's just a checkbox that you have to do that you've spoken about what you would like to do. Speaking to a faculty member doesn't guarantee you get a program or a term. I would mention, and this for any major, this makes sense. There's one part of your application where we ask you academically, is there a particular semester you need to go abroad? So if you're behind in a major or a minor, or there's a particular course you need here at BC in the fall semester, please list it. It's not 100% guarantee you will then get the spring or vice versa the fall, but it helps us make decisions to make sure that we're placing you as best we can in a semester in a program that makes the most sense for you. You only get approved for 1 program, so you list 6, but we're only going to approve you for 1. We've instituted, and I'll leave this up here, as part of some feedback last year, we've reinstituted the idea of meeting with what we call a program manager, or PM, study abroad advisor, for the programs listed on this slide and the next slide. These programs that we listed here, there are really 2 main reasons we ask students to follow up and meet with the study abroad advisor. One, particularly on this slide, these are some of the most popular programs, but also have within them really important details that some of our students will miss. So for example, BC and Parma, we've had students with higher level Italian language skills choose what's called Dante. Dante is a language learning place for students who are more beginner level. The University of Parma is more appropriate for students with more Italian background. So our program manager for the region wants you to be aware of what that is and to sort of assuage any fears about what it is to be at the University of Parma. There are other examples here as well within these. The next page, these programs, which seems, the reason these programs are listed is that these programs have sort of a lot of sort of minor things. They're not really competitive. You're likely going to get most of one of these programs here as a first choice, not across the board, but they have things you may want to be aware of. So BC and Croatia, for example, our study abroad advisor for the region, and Professor Owens is familiar with the program as well, wants to make sure you're aware of what the program is covering before you choose it. So she's required you to meet with her. This is also information you'll get in the Study Abroad 101. I picked it right from those slides. So I'll leave it out. You can linger on here for a second, take a photo, write it down if you want, and go back for a second. But we can also repeat. We can get this to you if you're not sure of who you need to meet with. All right, I'm going to close up here and just do these all at once because it's easier to talk through them as opposed to hitting my mouse a few times. So after this meeting, after the Study Abroad 101, we implore students to do more individual research. Not asking you to spend 5 hours a day from now until January 5th, researching programs, but understanding what programs might be a full year only program, or understanding what the language requirements are of a program. The thing with abroad is that it can be very easy to take it as, well, it's just another thing I'm doing at BC and I don't have to interact with our office that much. I'm just going to go. The more work you put into it, the more effort, the more comfortable you will feel about the program or programs you choose. OGE advisor, that's just a study abroad advisor, program manager. We have people for all regions of the world in our office who can help you out. If you're not sure who to talk to, also go to Getting Started. There's a list of program advisors here. You can always also email me. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. The deadline for semester and academic year is January 5th, end of the day. You have to do a study abroad 101 and all that before then, but January 5th is when you apply. There's an application on the My OGE, which if you've done the 101, you're aware of what that is. The summer deadline, which I didn't spend much time on summer, but I'll do a little plug here. Summer deadline's a little bit later. That's February 5th. Summer is open for anyone after their first year here at BC. There is no GPA requirement. When I refer to summer, I'm referring to faculty-led programs. Faculty-led programs are 4-week courses in a country and region of the faculty's choosing. You'll get credit for the program. It's a good way to sort of dip your toes into the water of going abroad. Or if you decide that the semester isn't for you, it's also a good way to have an international experience, but in a more compressed time frame. Professor Owens has run summer programs in the past. Others in the department have as well. They're generally very successful and generally very well received by students. So they're worth looking at even in conjunction with a semester program overall. We also offer summer internships through BC in various locations. And there's more information on our website underneath summer. Pretty easy to remember. Once you've been approved, and as I mentioned, if you have a 3.0 and you're good academic standing, you will be approved. Just a matter of them deciding if you want to go. We'll work with you to prepare you to go over the next few months before you go abroad. And then you'll go and it'll be amazing, and you'll come back and you'll be hopefully an international, maybe a peer mentor, and talk about your abroad experience, or talk with us and have that as part of your time here. So those are the main things I want to get across. The quick summary: if you haven't done a Study Abroad 101, please sign up for them. There's still plenty of left between now and December 15th is the last one. You must do one of these to be eligible to apply. It's underneath Getting Started, and there's a link to what's called the Study Abroad 101. Once you've done that, it's just a matter of research and applying by January 5th of 2023. So January 5th, 2023. That's what I have. I can stop sharing my screen. So that's and answer any questions however you would like to do that.
Thank you so much, Larry. I really appreciate it. Tons of great information here and good advice. I'd like to pitch in a few things as well for IS majors and minors that are here. It's really important that you try to seek out both expert advice and peer advice. There are different kinds of knowledge and information. So the OGE program advisors that work for that office have expert advice about the programs, exactly how students have responded to them and what are the requirements and everything. Your peers are also terrific people to talk to about their experiences abroad, but may not know the difference between the two programs in Japan and Korea, or about the requirements for something they weren't involved with or whatever. Both of them have really important information and wisdom to offer you. So please take advantage of the opportunities to talk to OGE program advisors, OGE peer mentors, international studies peer advisors, all of whom have gone abroad, all of our seniors have gone abroad, and other people through the International Studies Student Association, or ISSA, is a student-run organization, has a meeting next week about how to get the most out of study abroad. There'll be info about that in Monday's newsletter. So there's a ton of opportunities for you to talk about what the experience might be like for you, ask questions about it, what their experiences were, et cetera. You really should be able to go into this with a lot of information about other people's experiences. The last thing, two things. We frequently mentioned in our newsletters about summer programs. You saw yesterday, I just put a link in the chat about a link to info sessions about summer programs, which relates to the idea of what international studies approves, the courses we approve. Majors can take back up to 2 classes from being abroad each semester that count towards your major. What this typically means is there are electives that count towards your IS electives within, and remember, if that's the case, they have to count within your concentration. So they have to relate to your concentration, but they can also count for like your upper level econ course or your comparative politics course. We're unlikely to approve them replacing your other IS core courses, but IS electives, foundations sometimes, and your upper level econ or comparative politics classes. Okay, so anyway, that's super helpful. The other thing I'll add about this while you guys are thinking about questions is that that list, the second page of that list that he offered, were programs that are maybe a little more boutique-y as well, that have a unique sort of aspect to them that is something really special about them. But it's important to know what you're getting into, if it means that it's a small program, or that if you're traveling more than average, or if it's language heavy or something like that. That's important to know, because not all study abroad programs are you being a traditional exchange student just happen to attend another university. Some of them are curated things that are, you travel together, you live in close quarters, and you're with a BC group more for various reasons. So it's important to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, and I would add with the program managers, this has been something that as I was one myself for a long time. What I'll use the we, because I still like to advise students. We want students to know we're here to help you out, and we want to sort of answer questions. We're sort of the experts on the regions. No question is too silly or too serious. We're equipped to help you out, or at least point you in the right direction. You can meet with them anytime you want, obviously before the application, but we kind of expect the relationship to continue after you've been approved. They'll be the ones who will help you get abroad, answer questions about course approvals, or direct you to who to get courses approved by, questions about arrival, things like that. So there's one for every region here. Meet with all of them, meet with one of them, meet with them more than once, whatever works for you.
I also want to, so raise your hand if you want to speak. I'm going to offer a couple more comments here, but just students get priority over me, of course. If you have anything you want to ask questions about. I want to thank you, Larry, for your transparency around showing numbers of applications for spring and fall also. This is usually one of the top sources of anxiety for students in our major, who want to know what are the odds of going here or there, or what are the odds of going in the spring versus in the fall, or something like that. So it's important for students to understand the dynamics of that, but also the process involves you being able to explain why you want to go somewhere a certain semester. That why usually should be more focused on how that fits your needs academically or professionally, and less about missing football games here and more about how that fits your schedule. Nobody's unaware of football schedule here at Boston College, but at the same time, the OGE has to make decisions based on a whole range of things, and they're going to prioritize the academic reasons. So make sure that you're learning well, so you can about what those are, so you can explain them in your application process. So,
I'll answer Elizabeth's question in a first, but I'll come back. I can give more nuance to how to pick programs. I wanted to get a lot of things out there, but since we have time, I'll in a moment come back to that. But first, as we said, we'll take student questions, their priority over that. But I'll give some more info in a moment.
Yeah, my question was about the PM managers. Are there also ones for external programs? And if so, do you also recommend reaching out to them?
Yeah, as I said, everything flows through our office. So the study abroad advisors are program specialists for every program we have. So they will be the BC programs and the approved external programs. We don't treat them any differently, except for how grades come back. But overall, we administer them. You have to be approved to go abroad for either type of program by us. So they should be able to answer. I'll use the UK, that was my region program, answer about Newcastle University and the BU program in London. We're equally adept at answering both questions. I see, Gabe, you have your hand up as well, and that'll give an explanation on picking programs.
I was just gonna ask, like, as an IS major, like, no matter like where we go, is it like likely that we'll find courses that will like fulfill requirements?
I'll give the general answer that yes, generally speaking, my experience with IS majors is you'll find courses that the IS department will approve. Now, if you are double major in something else, I can't make that same guarantee, but that's also why you want to meet with the program managers, because I've had situations with, let me use computer science as an example. Someone will get really set on a university or a city, but there's no computer science. So we ask students to be open to meeting with us for those recommendations. IS though, Eric, Professor Owens, you can answer this a little bit better than I. I've not seen it be an issue but please correct me if I'm wrong, or if you want to add more context to that.
I've never seen a student go abroad who hasn't had classes approved for our major, but at the same time, I have to say that we require that you have your courses pre-approved. So as part of our process, you have to submit the courses you think you'd like to bring back into the major or minor to Professor Nakazato, who's our Director of Undergraduate Studies. And he, sometimes in consultation with me, will make the decision about whether or not that class is approved. So we prevent any sort of problems by having in advance. So you would never take a class expecting it to count for our major and then have us say no after you take the class. It's very important to us that you know exactly what you're getting. But I don't recall any time where students haven't been able to take classes back. But again, the process is designed to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and I'll jump into sort of, because the question you posed in the chat, Eric, sort of gets at this. Two different things. One, the question is, total program placement prioritizes thematic study over language acquisition. Is this true? The bigger picture thing here is for the students, it's important to hear from other students about what their experiences were like, but please don't get too caught up in OGE is going to prioritize X over Y, or they only want students to go on this program, or things like that. Come and ask us, and we'll clarify if anything is true or not. So the question about, we don't prioritize a thematic program over language acquisition, or language acquisition over going to England or anything like that. I'm going to give you kind of a very nuanced and broad sort of thing to think about. With our study abroad programs, we have, whether it's BC or the approved external programs, we have agreements on how many students we can send to these programs per year, or internally, externally with the partners, things like that. Basically benchmarks we have to meet. That means some programs can only accept 5 students. That means some programs will accept 35 students. It very varies from program to program. And where we can, we've listed that on our website. When it comes to sort of choosing programs, our ultimate goal is we understand that this whole balancing enrollment can be problematic for some students. Like, I really want to go in the spring and I don't want to go in the fall. What does that mean? We sort of hear you. But the thing to think about is that when you're looking at your programs, there's ways to sort of go about how you choose programs. So here's an example, one big example. When you're looking at fall versus spring, or a program versus a program, there are going to be certain programs where everybody applies to that program, thus making it more competitive. So if you really want to go to England and you're not bothered about going to London versus Newcastle, Newcastle's a new partnership. It's actually where I studied abroad for a year, so it's familiar to me. If you want to just be in England, you can totally choose a program in London, but know that London, everybody wants to go to London and the numbers are smaller. Newcastle's newer, so not only are you more likely with just a 3.0 to get Newcastle, you might be able to pick your semester. You can play that argument out across different programs as well. You really want to go to Spain, but you're at a 3.3 and it doesn't matter which semester, pick the fall semester. More students are going to pick, I talk with my hands all the time. I just realize it in the bottom. But if you really want to go to, if you really want to be in Madrid, be comfortable picking the fall semester as even your second choice. So spring for your first choice, but fall for the second choice, because less students pick fall. you're more likely to get to Madrid in your second choice. Don't start picking Madrid, London, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, other programs you saw all for the spring, because now you're not likely going to get any of those programs because everyone's choosing the same programs. So be strategic about what you want. If you really, again, if there's a certain program you really want to be in, select it twice. You get 6 programs, select it fall, select it spring, select it spring first, fall. What it doesn't really matter. If it's a country you want to be in, don't just get hung up on the big city. I use the UK a lot because that's where I studied and what I advise, but I am always dismayed of how many students want to go to England but only choose London. London is not England. It's like saying New York City is the US. It's a good example of the US. It's a good example of the UK, but it's a large international multicultural city. And by even just saying that, that could be New York, that could be London, could be Tokyo, could be other places. So you want to kind of think carefully about what makes the most sense to you. I have done the reason I always lead recently why I've been here for a long time. I've done this for a long time. I have very rarely seen a student go abroad and say it was awful. It does happen, but I could if you gave me 2 minutes, I could probably think of the 10 students who over the 15 years, 30 seconds probably, to figure out the names of students who did not like it. Almost everyone I've worked with has had a good, positive experience, no matter where they go and no matter when they go. So I think it's just good advice that if you want this to happen, it will, provided you're 3.0 and provided you're flexible about where you want to go.
I'd also like, from the international studies perspective, to encourage students to have an open mind about where you're going and to think outside of the most traveled places as well. If you're interested in African politics or in migration or in Latin American affairs or something, go to those places where you have an interest and develop those themes. Or if you have an interest in gender equality, you might be better off studying it someplace outside of Madrid and Paris, or whatever the themes are that have caught your interest. BC offers tons of programs that all over the world, and international studies is about decentering the United States, but also thinking globally. The experience of being abroad isn't simply about traveling with friends. It's exploring new places and new ways of life. And you should really take seriously places outside of Europe as places to study. At least sit and think seriously about what it would look like, what it would mean to, what the location would be like. Talk to some other students who have studied abroad in other parts of the world, including our peer advisors and peer mentors at OGE, because their experiences are pretty great.
One last note on that, and then I'll stop talking. I've done this long enough where I see enough students get mesmerized by names of university. Oh, I can go to Oxford, I go to LSE, I can go to Sciences Po. You can, but all the universities we work with are excellent universities and offer really interesting subject matter. One still European-centric university that I'll mention that falls into this is SOAS in London. So if you find for whatever reason, you don't want to go to Africa or the Middle East, but you want to study those subjects, there are some universities like SOAS where that's their specialty. So it's in London, but you're studying Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. It's a great university that's underutilized by a lot of students. I would prefer it over LSE or other schools in the UK at times. I would prefer you go, as Professor Owens said, to go to Asia, Africa, or the Middle East if that's the topic and subject matter you're interested in. But there are sometimes these niche programs, even in places you've heard of that you haven't heard of, that are quite good and bear meeting with a program manager and exploring more fully.
Yeah, and also we encourage our students to think beyond study abroad, beyond your junior spring or junior fall, to your senior thesis projects, to research projects that you work with. Larry mentioned, research opportunities. We really encourage students to do internships and research projects while you're abroad. We nominate all of our majors for advanced study grants, which provide travel funding that you can use to travel somewhere before or after your study abroad, or to do projects while you are abroad. And it helps to build a great extra set of understanding as you think about writing a senior thesis as well. It's good professionally, it's good intellectually, it's good culturally. So think of study abroad not as something that's self-contained and is you're going to be quote unquote gone for a semester, but rather that it's a whole open new space for you to make new connections and do new things from a new base of operations. And that includes research and working. So any last questions before we let you guys go? Okay, I really appreciate you guys being here. Tell your friends. We'll put a recording of this up on our YouTube channel and on our website as well. But thank you especially to Larry for taking the time to be here and for your commitment to our students and to the process. We really appreciate the work you do for BC and especially for our international studies majors and minors. I mentioned in the chat, 85 to 90% of our IS majors study abroad at some point during their time here. This is a core of what we do, and we lean on OGE for their expertise there. So thank you so much for all you do, and thanks everybody for being here today.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and thank all of you for being here. Look forward to seeing you over in Hobby House at some point.
All right, terrific.
All right,
take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.